The headline was already scrolling when I poured my coffee. Emergency shutdown. Global disruption. Clients offline. I didn't lean closer to the screen. I didn't turn up the volume. The numbers were loud enough on their own. $2.5 billion gone. Not projected. Not estimated. Airlines stopped boarding. Banks froze transactions. Customer service lines collapsed under their own apologies. Somewhere downtown, executives were shouting into speakerphones, demanding explanations no one could give fast enough. I watched it the way you watch weather radar when a storm finally makes landfall, not with excitement, not with fear, just confirmation. Are you wondering where the damage I just mentioned came from? Don't worry, I'll tell you right now. But first, could you tell me your lucky number? And what's the temperature where you live right now? Okay. The story continues with my phone ringing. Once, twice, then again. I didn't flip it over. I didn't silence it either. Letting it ring felt more honest. Outside my window. The city moved on. People walked dogs. A delivery truck double-parked. Somewhere, a barista misspelled a name on a cup. Normal life has an impressive tolerance for other people's disasters. I took a sip of coffee, still hot, still bitter. 12 hours earlier, none of this had happened yet. That morning, I was still employed. Before we continue, I want to be clear with you. The story you're about to hear is a blend of real workplace situations and fictional elements, with artificial intelligence used to deepen the emotional experience and help deliver the message. I hope it resonates with you. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Please rest well and take care of yourself. Let me tell this story properly. From the morning before anything broke, before anyone started pretending they were surprised. My name is Ember Cole. I was the senior systems director, and for 30 years, I was the person who kept the system alive when it had every reason to fail. I didn't manage dashboards. I managed consequences. When alarms escalated, my name appeared because I understood which problems were noise and which ones could burn a company to the ground. That morning followed a rhythm I trusted. I arrived before sunrise, checked overnight logs, and spoke briefly with my team. No drama, no panic, just quiet competence doing its job. I had stopped power cascades before they spread. I had contained cooling failures before hardware melted. The absence of headlines was not luck, it was work. Logan Price arrived later, moving fast enough to be heard before he was seen. He was newly promoted vice president. 29. Confident in the way only someone protected by a title can be. He spoke in conclusions, not questions. He didn't wait for answers. He talked over them. Logan believed systems were flexible because presentations were. He trusted summaries more than experience and speed more than sequence. He called it momentum. I called it ignorance with good posture. Nothing was broken yet. The systems were stable. The lights stayed on. And the only reason they did was because someone was still paying attention. That someone was me. I just didn't know it. Logan Price didn't wait long to announce his new vision. 2 weeks into the role, he called an all-hands meeting and stood at the head of the table like a keynote speaker who'd mistaken a company for a conference. He spoke quickly, confidently, and almost entirely in slogans. We need agility. We need velocity. We need to cut what's holding us back. Each sentence landed with a smile, as if charm could replace comprehension. Then he clicked to the slide that mattered, a chart labeled cost optimization. My department sat at the top. Legacy cost, Logan said casually, tapping the screen. Important historically, but no longer aligned with where we're going. I looked around the room. My team didn't react. They were used to being invisible until something caught fire. Logan kept going. He talked about streamlining, outsourcing, simplification. He said, "We don't need perfection. We need speed." Someone laughed. He took that as agreement. When I raised a concern, he nodded without listening. "Let's park that," he said, already moving on. The warning was technical, specific, and inconvenient. Predictive models showed early stress in a core subsystem. Nothing dramatic yet, just a signal. Logan waved it off. We'll circle back if it becomes material. It was already material. He just didn't know how to read it. I remember thinking how neat everything looked in his slides. Clean lines, no consequences, in real systems. Every shortcut leaves a scar. I'm telling you this now because that alert didn't disappear. It waited. That alert would resurface. The meeting ended with applause and calendar notifications. Logan looked pleased, like someone who believed applause meant progress. As we packed up, my phone buzzed. A new invite. Subject budget realignment session. Mandatory. Scheduled for the following morning. That was the moment the story narrowed. Strategy had finished talking. Arithmetic was about to take over. I didn't argue, correct, or interrupt him. I wrote notes instead. Knowing numbers would speak later. Visions fade, systems don't, and when budgets replace slogans, reality always asks the final question. Slowly, without mercy. And nobody ever likes the answer. The budget meeting was held in the glass-walled conference room, the one executives liked because everyone could see who was being put on display. Logan Price sat at the head of the table, relaxed, confident, already decided. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look at me when he spoke. We've reviewed the numbers, he said, folding his hands like a moderator. And we've decided to move in a different direction. Different direction meant me. He talked about efficiency, about cost centers, about modernizing leadership. He used words like alignment and optimization. Then he looked up for the first time and said, Ember, your role is no longer necessary. The room went still, not shocked, not confused, just quiet enough to make it public. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask for clarification. I didn't defend 36 quarters of uptime. I sat there, hands folded, letting him finish. This isn't personal, Logan added. Generous in the way people are when they think they're being kind. We need leaders who can move fast. I nodded. He smiled, relieved by my silence. Then he turned toward my team. Troy, Iris, Nadira, watching him closely. You'll adapt, Logan said. The company will support you. That was the moment the clock started. I stood, thanked him for the clarity, and walked out without another word. Behind me, no one spoke. The meeting ended anyway. Decisions like that always do. Outside the room, my phone buzzed. Inside, the future had already begun counting down. I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt compressed, like pressure sealed inside a system waiting for release. They thought they had removed a cost. They didn't understand what they had just disconnected. Logan never looked back. He didn't need to. He believed endings were clean. He believed authority made things final. He was wrong, but not yet. At that moment, all he saw was compliance. All I felt was time starting to move. The countdown wasn't loud. It never is. It just begins. Quietly. Once the person holding everything together steps aside. And this time, I let it run. No one noticed yet. The hallway outside my office was quiet when I closed the door behind me. No escort, no announcement. Just the soft click of a latch ending 30 years of routine. I packed slowly, not out of sentiment, but precision. The notebook went into my bag first. Then the photo I kept face down on my desk. The mug my team had given me years ago followed. Everything else stayed. None of it mattered. I didn't log out of systems. I didn't delete files. That would have been sabotage. And this wasn't that. I was simply leaving. When I stepped back into the open floor, chairs scraped. One sound, then another. Iris closed her laptop. Troy set his pen down. Nadira unplugged her workstation. No speeches. No glances toward management. Just movement, one by one. They stood. Security badges appeared on desks like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. 7 of them, clean, plastic, final. No one asked me what to do. I didn't ask them to follow. We had worked together long enough to recognize a decision when it was made. We walked toward the elevators in a straight line. Not rushing, not hiding. People watched but said nothing. Loyalty rarely needs witnesses. As the doors closed, I counted silently. 7 badges left the building. So did 7 safeguards. Outside. The city didn't react. Traffic moved. Phones rang. Somewhere upstairs. Logan Price was probably congratulating himself for cutting dead weight. In his mind. He had removed resistance. Reduced complexity. Won. I understood the mistake he was making. He believed systems were held together by policies, and people were interchangeable. He thought compliance meant control. The truth was simpler. You can't replace experience by deleting it. You can only remove it and wait. We stepped onto the sidewalk together, not looking back. There was no anger in that moment, just resolve. Logan would call it a victory. The numbers would briefly agree with him. For a few hours, maybe longer. Everything would appear stable. Appearances last until they don't. And while he celebrated efficiency, we carried something heavier than resumes, something earned slowly, quietly, over decades, waiting patiently for the moment the system would finally ask who actually understood it when everything stopped pretending and demanded real answers then. If you believe walking away together without shouting, without begging, without sabotaging was the right move, leave a 1 in the comments. Your voice matters. Because these decisions only stay silent when people stop speaking up. By the next morning, my absence had already been rebranded as progress inside the building, framed as efficiency rather than loss, and sold upward as decisive leadership executing a long-overdue modernization initiative strategy now. They replaced us quickly, proudly, with an outsourced operations team flown in overnight, young, credentialed, well-dressed, and visibly nervous, clutching printed manuals like flotation devices while pretending confidence they had not earned yet somehow. Logan introduced them in a meeting that felt more like a product launch, praising flexibility, scalability, and fresh perspective, while never once mentioning experience, continuity, or the cost of forgetting how the system actually breathed. Boxes of documentation were stacked on tables, thorough, color-coded, meticulously formatted, and completely lifeless. Because real systems are not sustained by binders, but by instincts built through failure, repetition, and responsibility over time alone. Someone asked about the flagged anomaly I had raised weeks earlier, and Logan smiled politely before saying, "We'll monitor it," the corporate equivalent of closing your eyes and hoping physics respects optimism eventually today, somehow. I watched from a distance as checklists replaced judgment and dashboards replaced intuition, knowing the warning signs hadn't vanished, only been ignored, delayed, and quietly stored for later retrieval by reality itself, without mercy eventually. Logan ended the meeting with a confident nod and a sentence meant to sound simple, decisive, and final. Just keep it running. As if continuity were a switch instead of a fragile agreement, always fragile. What none of them noticed was the system responding quietly, methodically, withdrawing permissions, limiting pathways, and sealing dependencies. Not in panic, but in self-defense. Exactly as I had designed years earlier, deliberately, carefully alone. This was not failure yet, only preparation, the kind that looks invisible until it finishes. Because systems built to survive do not ask permission before protecting themselves from misuse quietly internally without warning signs whatsoever. By the time anyone sensed something was wrong, the locks were already engaging, and momentum had shifted away from confidence toward consequence. Exactly where ignored warnings always lead in the end, sooner or much later. It started the way real disasters always do, quietly, with something small enough for confident people to dismiss. A minor fluctuation hit the system mid-morning, the kind my team used to correct before coffee cooled. The outsourced operators noticed it, hesitated, then followed the manual instead of instinct. They reset the wrong sequence, believing procedure mattered more than understanding. The system responded immediately. Loads shifted, safeguards rebalanced, alarms multiplied, not loudly at first, but insistently, like a warning tapping on glass. Logan demanded updates. "Why isn't it stabilizing?" he asked. Voice sharp now. Someone suggested another reset, another checklist, another delay. That was when the chain reaction began. Transactions slowed, then froze. Customer dashboards went dark. Internal services dropped one by one, not crashing, but locking themselves down, choosing preservation over performance. I later learned the CFO, Mara Keene, had walked into the operations room during the confusion. She watched engineers scroll through documentation with shaking hands and finally asked the question that mattered. Who here actually knows the full restart sequence? No one answered. The room filled with the kind of silence money recognizes immediately. Phones started ringing, not from inside the company, but from outside it. Banks asking why transfers were stalled, partners demanding timelines, clients calculating losses by the minute. This was no longer an IT issue, it was operational paralysis. Every safeguard my team had built was doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect hardware, prevent irreversible damage, shut down gracefully rather than burn. Graceful still looks like disaster to people who don't understand it. By early afternoon, the numbers were undeniable. Millions locked mid-transaction, services unavailable, confidence evaporating faster than liquidity. I watched all of it unfold from a distance, calm but alert, knowing panic accelerates collapse. And silence, when chosen deliberately, can expose exactly who understands systems, pressure, responsibility, and consequence when experience is suddenly absent, and leadership is tested without excuses. Then the request came through the executive channel, blunt and unmistakable. We need Ember coal, not a suggestion, a demand. That was the moment they realized the system hadn't failed them. They had removed the one person who knew how to speak to it. The call came late in the afternoon, after panic had replaced confidence and titles stopped meaning anything. I answered on the second ring, calm, already aware of what they needed and why they had waited too long. The screen filled with familiar faces, executives rigid in their chairs, advisors whispering off camera. Logan Price sat at the center, no longer speaking quickly, no longer smiling. No one introduced me. They didn't need to. I didn't apologize for leaving. I didn't ask to come back. I let the silence stretch until someone cleared their throat. We need you, Logan said finally. No, I replied. You need results. I explained the situation without drama. The system was protecting itself. Every minute of delay increased the damage. Restarting it incorrectly would cost more than letting it finish locking down. This is cheaper than letting it burn longer, I said. And for the first time, no one argued. I shared my screen. A contract appeared. Clear terms. Emergency restoration. Full operational control. Fees listed without apology. There were no threats. No raised voices. Just numbers and consequences. Logan started to speak, then stopped. The CFO leaned forward. The board exchanged looks. They understood leverage when they saw it. This isn't negotiation, I said. It's triage. They agreed. Then I scrolled to the final clause. All approvals, payments, and directives would be routed through a single executive liaison. I paused long enough for the words to settle. That will be Logan Price. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Authority had not been taken from him. It had been inverted. He would keep his title. He would sign every invoice. He would authorize every decision that reminded him exactly who now controlled the outcome. Logan nodded once. Stiffly, I'll sign, he said. That was the moment power changed hands. Quietly, permanently, without applause. I watched the call end, knowing nothing would ever return to the way it was. Because systems remember who saves them, and people never forget the moment they realize control has quietly slipped away from their hands without asking permission again. The system came back online in stages, not triumphantly, but carefully. Like a patient waking after surgery, banking transactions resumed. Flights reappeared on screens, services stabilized, the crisis banners disappeared, replaced by cautious press releases about resilience and recovery. The company survived. That was the headline they wanted. What never returned was independence. From that day forward, operations depended on my approval, my team's oversight, and contracts renewed on our terms. The board called it partnership. I called it dependence. They needed us to breathe. Logan Price kept his title, the office, the salary. But authority is not a badge you wear, it's permission others grant. His meetings became brief. His decisions became suggestions. Every request routed through him carried my signature above his. He learned silence quickly. The money did not come back. $2.5 billion vanished into insurance negotiations, legal settlements, and clients who never renewed. Markets forgive outages. They don't forgive arrogance. Reputation, once cracked, never seals cleanly again. Inside the company, confidence thinned. Outside it, trust shifted elsewhere. Competitors didn't need to attack. They simply waited. Then came the final correction. The project Logan had dismissed. The one he called unnecessary, over-engineered, and slow. Returned to the agenda. The same proposal. The same numbers. Only now it was labeled mandatory. He sent it to me for review. I read it carefully, made minor adjustments, and approved it without comment. Logan signed beneath my name, his hand steady, his authority absent. Justice doesn't announce itself. It settles, quietly, permanently. The system was saved. The company endured. But the cost was irreversible. They learned too late that survival is not the same as control, and that some losses never show on balance sheets, only in the way a company walks forward afterward. Smaller, cautious, and forever aware of what it threw away. That lesson followed them into every meeting, every audit, every future decision, shaping a quieter organization that survived by remembering restraint, humility, and the permanent shadow left by one confident mistake. No longer pretending expertise was optional or cheap. By the time the noise faded, my company had already grown beyond the temporary office where it began. Clients came quietly, through referrals and observation, not marketing. They wanted stability. They wanted people who understood consequences. My team was no longer invisible. Recruiters called daily, offers stacked up. No one left. They didn't need to. We were finally valued for what we protected, not how cheaply we could be replaced. Logan Price still occupied his office, but his presence thinned with every meeting. Fewer invitations, shorter emails. His name remained on documents, while decisions passed over him. Authority doesn't vanish loudly. It dissolves. One afternoon, another approval request arrived in my inbox. A familiar project, the same one he once dismissed with a smile and a buzzword. Now mandatory, now urgent. I reviewed it, signed, and sent it back. Later, I watched through glass as Logan added his signature beneath mine. No argument, no speech, just compliance. I didn't destroy the system. I simply stopped holding it together. That was the difference between revenge and resolution, and the reason the ending felt quiet, complete, and earned. It proved experience endures longer than arrogance. Titles, applause, or sudden power shifts alone. What stayed with me most after everything ended wasn't the money, the contracts, or the titles that quietly changed hands. It was the realization that systems fail long before they collapse, usually at the exact moment people stop listening to those who quietly hold things together. Real value isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself in meetings or slide decks. It shows up early, stays late, and absorbs pressure so others never have to notice. There was a point in this story where walking away felt risky, even irresponsible, but staying silent would have been worse. Sometimes the most ethical choice isn't fixing the mess again, it's refusing to be the only one paying the price for it. That line is different for everyone. If you were standing where I stood, what would you have done? Would you stay and hold everything together one more time? Or would you step back and let the truth surface on its own? This story isn't really about revenge. It's about dignity, about knowing when experience deserves respect, and when walking away is an act of self-respect, not surrender. If you've ever felt replaceable, despite knowing better, this story is for you. Tell me, where are you listening from right now? And if this story struck a quiet chord with you, there's a simple way to help it reach farther than this moment. Subscribing helps keep stories like this alive. A like or a share might carry it to someone who's questioning their own worth right now. Someone who needs reassurance more than advice. When you subscribe, comment, or share, you're not just supporting this channel, you're helping real, often unseen effort feel recognized again. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.